We've had millions of tenants in California who've been hanging by a thread, who, because they've lost their job or seen their income drop substantially, have had trouble and, in too many instances, not been able to pay one or more months of rent. And the challenge is we've had a statewide temporary eviction ban put in place by the judiciary branch through the Judicial Council. That ban is scheduled to be lifted very likely on September the 1st, so in 2+ weeks. When that happens, if we don't change state law, we could have literally millions of tenants who could be evicted, because if they have been unable to pay some portion of the back rent in recent months, that rent would all come due on September 1st, and they would be required to immediately pay all past due rent, or they could be evicted within a matter of weeks. So I have proposed AB 1436 to address that situation.
And what are some of the details and what are some of the protections that are provided for, first off, for renters?
So first and foremost, we can't allow a wave of massive evictions during this time period. It would be catastrophic. It would be terrible for homelessness, for COVID-19 spread, and for people being able to make it during this time period. Evictions have not been an appropriate way to collect on the issue of back rent. Evictions are typically used to allow a landlord to regain property. Eviction lawsuits have essentially been a way for landlords to get their property returned back for them. But it's not a very good way of getting people to pay back rent, particularly during this time period where, for reasons that are no one's fault, people just don't have money. And so, if we don't change the law, the only recourse that landlords will have will be an eviction. So what we're going to see are a whole slew of people evicted and landlords who get no money. What our bill has proposed, what we're saying is that tenants shouldn't be evicted simply because they can't pay COVID-19 related back rent. We're saying they should have a little bit of time to get back up on their feet, hopefully earn and save the money to be able to pay their landlords back. So, our goal is to make sure that tenants stay housed while allowing landlords to collect their rent. And we want to give renters a chance to get back on their feet and give landlords a chance to get the monies that they are due without having to file expensive lawsuits. So that's the thrust of the tenant portion of the bill. And we've certainly heard during this time period that we have not only struggling tenants, but in many instances, they're paying rents to small property owners and landlords who are also struggling to pay their mortgages. So this bill also would provide mortgage forbearance protections for many of those individuals. At the federal level, the Federal CARES Act, the stimulus package from many months ago, provided some property owners with mortgage forbearance. The idea that they don't have to pay their mortgage every month, that they could get a time period to save up enough money to pay that mortgage. At the federal level, if you have a federally backed mortgage, you get 12 months of mortgage forbearance. But if you don't have a federally backed mortgage, and that is many, many mortgages in California, you don't get mortgage forbearance protection. So our bill would provide every property owner in California at least 6 months of mortgage forbearance. For smaller property owners and homeowners, they would receive 12 months of property forbearance. For larger apartment associations, 5 units or above, it's 6 months. So everyone would receive some level of mortgage forbearance. Smaller property owners would get at least 12 months, which would mirror the help we're providing on the tenant side. So our hope is, by giving tenants some time to get themselves back up on their feet, they'll be able to pay their landlord back. By giving landlords some time to have to pay the bank, they'll get some time to make sure that they don't foreclose on their mortgage. So big picture, our bill is trying to provide a holistic, balanced approach to assisting struggling tenants, homeowners, and landlords during this very difficult time period.
A couple more questions. Getting back to renters, say someone's renting a place right now, an apartment, they haven't been able to pay rent. Maybe they paid the rent up until now. But come September, they're not going to be able to because they're out of work. How long would they have the rent deferred under your bill?
Sure. Well, if the law doesn't change, come September 1st, if the Judicial Council makes the decision today that we're expecting, that tenant could get evicted within a matter of days if they can't pay that full rent. Under our bill, technically they would have uh, effectively a year after 3 months from this date. So let's say another year plus to be able to pay that rent back. There's complicated scheduling formulas in our legislation, but they would have at least a year to get back up onto their feet to pay the landlord back. And this is in part why we want to provide mortgage forbearance protections for those same property owners, so they have some time before they have to pay their bank back.
And would they have to pay it all back at once after that time?
That's still to be determined. Under our bill, they would owe all that rent at the end of that year, and likely under the mortgage forbearance provisions, the landlord would also owe that amount of mortgage at the end of that time period. But that's all still being discussed right now.
Gotcha. And finally, what are the chances of it being passed, and how soon could it become law?
Well, every policymaker knows that we have to do something by the end of this month. If we don't, we would see an utter catastrophe. We would see a wave of massive evictions and foreclosures, and no one wants that. But these issues are challenging, and so we are working around the clock with the governor's office and our colleagues to put something together that balances the interests, ensures that people have the protections that we need them to have during this pandemic and recession, and hopefully get this done in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and the session comes to a close in 2 weeks from now?
The session comes to a close August 31st, which is why the Judicial Council has set September 1st for when its order would expire. So the hope and expectation is we need to get something done by the end of this month.